Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So, I've had backyard chickens since 2004 or 5. I don't know what it is. Um, my family and I had chickens. Some of our old videos I don't have up anymore. The homesteading videos. So we had backyard chickens from 2004 to 2012. So for 8 years, and then going to India for so many years, and then going back to America, and then my wife, my wife now had backyard chickens maybe 3 or 4 years um, before we got together. So and then since that time we've had hens and chickens, for egg laying, and um, there's been all these things about bird flu and giving them antibiotics, giving them vaxes. Trump wants to vaccinate all chickens, like there's a whole thing. And there's destroying some of these birds. I don't know what the thing is, right? My wife's told me a little bit about it. And egg prices have been sort of the barometer of inflation recently. Everyone's talking about egg prices. And Trump was talking about egg prices. Oh, egg prices are stabilized. So, and I talked about how chickens lay more in the spring. And so we haven't gotten new chicks. We used to get new chicks every year. But because of a variety of issues, we haven't got chicks in about 3 years. So my wife would order chicks from one of the, there's these online hatcheries, or these hatcheries that you can buy chicks online, and they mail them to you, and with like a little heating pad, you get day old chicks. They hatch and they throw them in a box, and they one day them to you, and then you pick them up at the post office, and almost all the time they're all alive, which is crazy. Like it sucks if you open a box and be all dead chicks, but you can hear them. You pick them up at the post office, you bring them in a car, and they're chirping away, and you bring them into your house, and we have a setup, with a heat light and some other things, just all the things chicks need, and they're cute, and they all are like, they don't look anything like they're gonna look, and then they grow up to lay eggs in about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months. I don't know what it is. They grow relatively quickly, and then you have a new set of chicks, and the younger ones are the ones that lay the most. Like chickens, I think they probably at the hatcheries they terminate them after about a year or two, like after about 2 years, because they lay bigger eggs. The jumbo eggs are just older hens that lay bigger eggs. And we have a variety of colors of, the chicks themselves are quite, the chickens themselves are exotic, right? They come from a bird called the jungle fowl. And if you've ever seen a jungle fowl at a zoo, it's a small chicken that comes from India. And they're quite neat looking. But, you see all the different types of chickens there are. They have iridescent feathers, especially the roosters are, it's kind of spectacular, although roosters are more or less a pain in the ass. But, we've had some over the years. Dandy chickens. We had this guy for a while. He died. And, we had some good broody hens. The hens that grow broody are ones that can hatch out chicks and raise them. And we had, over the years in my first farm, we had these various broody hens that would raise out chicks. I have some videos of it where my border collie Lucy was, I was, maybe I can even find that video, but she was herding the chicks, like she'd watch over them. And one time, one of the hens went at Lucy like a torpedo and scared the shit out of her. It was kind of funny. They get defensive and they get aggressive. Like ones that are on a lower level of the pecking order with the hens will all of a sudden stand up to some of the other hens because they have chicks. And the chicks would sleep in their feathers, and sometimes they'd peek out. It's kind of cute, especially when they're young. And the mother hen would go around and raise the chicks and show them what to do. Of course, with that, you were going to get a bunch of roosters, right? Like you would just randomly put eggs in a place. Like a hen would go broody, and I'd find a place for her. Like I'd reestablish a place. We had this little well house, and I would put her in a corner, and I could close the well house at night, and she'd bring the chicks out at the day, and they would scratch and they would do whatever they were doing, and then they go into the well house, and I close it up at night so they wouldn't be eaten by predators. And so, we'd have these new chicks um, every year, and the mother hens would raise them and things, and we had to have roosters for that because they had to, the eggs have to be fertilized, and so this was a process, and the roosters. I mean, we couldn't have too many of them. They basically like sort of raping the hens all the time. I mean, they're just brutal, and like it's kind of a violent act, and if you have too many roosters, like the hens would lose their feathers on their back where the rooster would stand. It just was it was hard on the hens, and it was just whatever. And you have to establish, like I said, a separate place to raise for the mother to go broody. Like they sit on the eggs for like 24 days or whatever it is, the gestation period, and then if they're bad at being broody, they'll leave the eggs for too long, and the chicks will die, and you'll have these like eggs, and they'll end up stinking, and depending on how far the chicks had developed before they died, it's kind of gross. So there's some liabilities to that as well. You can buy an incubator where you put the eggs and they spin the eggs and they keep them at a certain temperature and a certain humidity. See, underneath the chicken, there's like 84% humidity, and the temperature has to be whatever it is. And so, all these things are a little bit kind of interesting. And buying chicks, you could get the majority of them will be hens and not roosters, because they have ways of telling or whatever it is, right? So, and that's there's advantages to that. There's a group of chicken called sex link that the roosters are white and the hens are red, and they can tell right off the bat whether they're a hen or a rooster, like 100%. And they're good layers, but they're ugly chickens. But anyways, they're kind of neat to have around. We have all these different kinds, and we've like I said, we've ordered them every year, except we haven't done them in the last 3 years. And so we're down to 9 hens, and they're all old. We just allow the hens to die naturally or predators to get them. And it's not cost effective really I mean, well, now with egg prices, of course, it's better. But in terms of the feed and all the energy and time you put into them, it's not really all that cost effective when you have older hens. But, it sucks killing them. Like I just am not into it. And it's just, and they're kind of, I mean, they have different personalities, and I don't want to call them pets, but they're a presence on the farm. And so the reason I'm saying all of this is my wife and I decided we need to get hens. We need to get chicks because, the way egg prices are going, we're in this post-apocalyptic situation, and we don't have any roosters. And so, when they're saying they're going to kill I mean, there's all these things that are out there, like about eggs and chickens, and, they're getting goofy. And this is all Trump stuff. Like, it's stuff that's being done under Trump and under RFK Jr. And then all the inflation. And so my wife went to order chicks, and the place where she buys chicks, there's just none available. Like all the hatcheries are out. And so the other option is we have gotten some chicks at Tractor Supply. And Tractor Supply gets their chicks from the same hatcheries. Tractor Supply is a farm store. And so you find these farm stores where they have chicks. Every spring they have some in there. And you go in the store and they're chirping, and they have various kinds. Oftentimes they have ducks. This time they had guinea fowls. And so we got all our stuff out of dust. We found all the stuff. We kind of knew where most of it was. And we cleaned it up, and we moved the stuff around in our house because we don't have much room. Like we have one place, and it usually has plants on it, and then we moved the plants away, and then put this a big plastic bin with a couple of rods that when they get older they can perch on, like they sleep on. They sleep holding onto branches in real life. Chickens naturally. And so we went to Tractor Supply. It was kind of a surprise. I got everything ready, and I said, like, it's chick day. We went to pick up some chicks, and they had some guinea fowl. Guinea fowl are crazy, like African birds that are really stupid. They're good for eating ticks, like they clear your land of ticks, which is a good thing. but they're not really tame. They don't lay eggs that you can find, and they just run around crazy. They're kind of interesting to have. They're kind of exotic looking. But if you have neighbors who aren't so great, they'll end up on your neighbor's property and they make a lot of noise. They're supposed to warn for predators, but they warn. They're. I mean, there's some advantages to having guinea fowl, but there's no, just as like people have peacocks or something. There's no you don't get eggs from them. They're just kind of neat looking and kind of funny to watch, especially when they chase each other. And if you ever seen videos of guinea fowl, but we're not getting them, and we're not getting any ducks. They didn't have ducks either, and people have ducks and ducks eggs. And we asked the guy, and they said they're only getting half the amount of chicks. So last year at this time, they were getting twice as many chicks as they're getting this year. And they're gone before noon when they get them, right? All the egg layers. People are, desperate to get them because they can't buy, because there's a run on chickens because people are freaked the fuck out because of egg prices. And people are getting, which I'm glad to hear that people are getting backyard hens. But holy fuck, right? So this is, something that's affected me, like in our life. There's things that I cover here all the time. Of course, inflation affects all of us. All of us who go to grocery stores, we're affected by that. I mean, there's things that generally affect our lifestyle. If there's gas prices, and gas prices affect everything because, things have to be transported. Electricity prices, things like that, power, energy prices, they all affect what our groceries and things, our ability to feed ourselves and the quality food that we can get. And then, now eggs, right? There's other things that are like, well, maybe it affects me, or you can't see, how it affects you personally. Like I have, no effects that I can tell about immigration. Like immigration isn't the reason why we're having inflation and why we're having egg prices, right? And so that's an issue that it's a mental issue. People freak out about it, or, because they've been told it's scary by Trump or by Biden or whatever, the people they listen to. And, there's real issues here. Of course, the debt is causing inflation, these things. I'm going to get into the national debt later. I want to get to some Hilaria Baldwin, some other kind of stuff. I got a theory about the Baldwins. I think's kind of funny, and I got some other funny stuff. But I'm going to eventually get to the national debt today and review some of that stuff. They've changed the national debt clock, which is interesting, and I'll talk about that. But, there's legitimate things going on with chickens, right, where people who own chickens now and buy chicks see a difference in what's happening. Okay, so my wife had called when I was in the middle of making this thing. It was around, I don't know, 9 something, 8, 9. And when we went to Tractor Supply, they said they weren't going to get chicks until today's Wednesday, March 19th. They weren't going to get them until Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. They just come in and they don't know about them, but to call. And I thought my wife might have called this morning, but I realized she hadn't, so I called and they had them. And so I dropped the mic. I left it on. I have to turn it off. It's on batteries. But I left it on. And I rushed out the house to get chickens, these hens. Now, a couple things about it. All these video clips that you've been seeing are from today. And I'll show those video clips with my audio to them after I'm done here. And it shows our hens now, and it shows the chicks I just received. And so they have Golden Wyandotte, which is one of my favorite chickens. One of our broody hens was a Golden Wyandotte, and they're really neat looking. They're they're good looking hens, and the coloring, and they're a dual purpose bird. They're good layers, and they make good broody mamas. They're some of the broody hens aren't good at it. They're not good at hatching out the chicks. They're not good at raising them. But the one, if I do find that clip of Lucy, I think it's the broody. It's that's I'll see if I can find a video of there'll be one of the video clips that you'll be seeing will be of the broody mama that was our Wyandotte. And my wife had a Wyandotte that was killed by a possum, which was the possum ended up sleeping in the nest box, and it was a whole thing. So I got 6 of the Golden Wyandottes and 3 of something called New Jersey Giants. They're called straight run, right? So you can get straight run. I forget what the other thing is called, But straight run means that you're getting both roosters and potential roosters and hens. It's usually more hens than roosters, but we usually don't buy straight run because we don't want a lot of roosters, and that means that I'll have to be culling some roosters later on, which is a complete drag for me, but it'll have to happen if we get a lot of roosters. And so I was talking to the girl that was giving the chicks to me, and she said that they'll be gone by noon. That it's been crazy that everyone's buying these chicks this year, and again, usually they get what the other thing that's not straight run, which is just flat out hens, and that's what we usually get. We usually don't ever get the straight run, but like it's basically beggars can't be choosers. Plus, we need some roosters. I want to be able to do broody hens, and that's we're probably going to buy chicks from the hatchery for later on this summer. You have a period of it takes I think about 6 months for the chickens to grow to where they're well, it takes 6 weeks for them to be out of the heat lamp, and it'll be summer by then, right? It's March, so it'll be sometime in May, and it'll be hot enough for them to be outside, and they'll start having feathers, and they'll be able to keep themselves warm. And then before they're ready, they're full grown. It's like maybe 6 months. I'm not sure what, and then they'll start laying eggs. And so it's a whole process to where we have them inside, and they're um, you know then they get big enough where they have to be out of the area, and they still need a heat lamp. But we have this plastic bin, which you can see from the video. The other thing is they were out of chick food. They were out of they have the food that they have for baby chickens, and we get some sort of organic foods, and they were out of it, right? Like last night when we went there. So it's crazy. They were out of the big bags. We got some of the smaller bags. It's crazy, but it's happening. Like this thing that just people are like concerned enough about egg prices that they're getting chickens. And the reality is, it's almost not cost effective. I mean, if you just let your chickens graze and be free range chickens, and you don't feed them chicken food, we've gotten these things from New Zealand. Then there's various types of these ones from New Zealand, where they're sort of heavy duty ones, where the chickens have to step on this metal, this metal step and open up their food, and that's kept the various birds. We get a lot of birds and mice that come in and steal the chicken food. We have hundreds of mice in there. Tulsi used to go in there and chase the mice. It was funny. Like, she's a good mouse hunter. She'd be chasing. We go in there with a headlamp on, and there'd be 100 mice scurrying around, and then there's flocks of starlings that would come in, and they would occupy a tree, and some of them would take turns coming in, like 5 or 10 of them would go in, and that was the whole thing. And then we'd get also sparrows, 2 invasive species of birds that would go in and eat the chicken food. And so, it would probably cost as much for the eggs when you factor in all the money it costs to raise the chickens. But in a apocalyptic situation, you can either make chicken food or you feed them leftovers or whatever's you have available, and they'll eat grass and bugs, especially in the summer. You just have to keep them alive during the winter. And also, you have to turn a light on to get them to lay in the winter. We don't do that. We give them a break, because, we can, and it's hard on the chickens to lay all year long. But without the chicken food, they don't lay as many eggs. They don't get enough protein. The chicken food enhances their laying ability. And so these are all things to consider, but people are freaked out because, egg prices, plus they're talking about this bird flu bullshit, right? So there's all of that. So yeah, let's move on to the other things. Let me show you the videos of the ones I took today of the chickens, so you get the. I was pretty psyched about it, like more so than normal. Like, I rushed out of the house and drove in a Tractor Supply, and they were, and there was nobody there. It's not a time of day where there's a lot of people, and they're still going to get enough people. And so there's another person that came in for chickens, and then I heard a phone call there was a phone call that the guy was telling them what kind they had when I was checking out. So, this is, there's, I would call this some level of panic because of egg prices and, inflation, and, people are maybe aware that the apocalypse might be upon us. Okay. I don't know if you can see the chicks in there. There's some I'll show you when we get home. There are chicks in the box, chirping away. Box of chicks. We got the chickens here, all hanging out. Various places, some on the steps here. I'll show you those more closely. These are what we have left. We used to have 30 at one point. First, you can hear the chicks. What do you guys think? Tulsi's gonna go nuts. This thing. So we got the red heat lamp on. I'm unboxing the chickens, chicks. Here they are. We have 6 golden Wyandottes and 3 Jersey Giants, which I've never heard about before, never seen them at Tractor Supply. I'm going to take them out and check them for poopy butt because my wife has given me the instructions to do so. They have some water here and I'm going to give them some food. This is a Jersey Giant. Looks a little bit big. No poopy butt. It's a plus. I'm supposed to dip the beak in water so they know where the water is. Then get the rest of these guys done here. Tulsi's very excited about the chickens. The chicks, they don't want her getting up here because that would be bad. But she hears them. These are our chickens. This is one of my favorite chickens of all time. We call her Copper, or I don't know what it is. My wife has a name for it, but she's got a cool copper color. We had a bunch of these ones before. Some of these these are this is a very tame chicken. I'm editing. I forgot the name. You can hear I'm struggling to find the name when I was outside, but it's a lavender Orpington. Some of the clips from I went through a bunch of clips of my old farm. We had a buff Orpington that was very broody. That's how we originally got the chickens. The person we bought our first cow from had a broody buff Orpington, and she came back with 15 chicks. And they had so many chickens, they wanted to get rid of them, so they gave some to us, and that's how we got started. But the lavender Orpington, the Orpingtons in general, but this one particularly, very tame, comes right up to you. We have a couple of those. Blue are they, so whatever they are. Yeah, this is an Astrolorp, one of the first chickens I had. When we first had Hens, I'll throw some more feed out. There's no reason to follow me around in the old barn we have here. Give them a little bit more. It's organic foods. It's a good time for them to eat grass. They're scratching, but they followed me around. I'm not sure why. This is, anyways, they're, it's okay. We don't know where they're. So these are our hens. Okay, there's a spider. I don't know if you can see it here. It's very tiny. Going in there to get probably eaten by the chickens. There's a chick going to get some food. There we go. We just put the food in. Starting to eat. One each, then they'll learn by watching. So that's good. I just might go get some water. There's this spider going up. I don't know what that's all about. It was in the barn. Can't be loving that hot light there, the spider. Whatever. And then they have the water, and they're pretty much calming down. Tulsi, on the other hand, is going nuts. There's a spider going down again. So there we are. There's our chicks. Our assortment of eggs. So you have a green one, some pink ones. We have blue ones, but there's none here. You had 5 eggs yesterday from 9 hens. So this is their kind of good laying time when the grass is just coming out fresh in March. But yeah, they're all in. They're eating food. Some of them are drinking some water. Some of them are sleeping. We have what is there? None of them have poopy butt. They all seem to be doing great. Looking in with the hens here, chicks here. They're drinking water and eating food. So they're getting along pretty well. Tulsi's pretty excited. And they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing. Heat lamps going on.
Um, yeah, it's going well.
Okay, so I did like a 40-part series on broody hens and all this stuff. And so seeing Lucy made me a little bit sad. Lucy, I kind of feel like I let down. We had to move from our farm and we had to give Lucy away, which, sucked. And I saw my daughter Anna, who was just so, vibrant back then. She just loved all the animals. There was a lot of good times we had at the farm. There was a lot of happiness, a lot of neat things, milestones. The kids learned to milk cows and all the stuff that we did. All the farm work, building buildings together, building the earth oven, the kids learning to bake bread in the earth oven. There was like, stuff. And so, there was, my family could have went one way or another. And, of course, there was always the disaster of my ex's psychological issues and her abuse history and things. And, I don't know if, I mean, sometimes people are just so broken they can't turn themselves around. And, and just the cleaning that I had to go through and all the stuff. So, but the way the family turned out sucks. And so, the good times that are there just, it sucks that it's like that. But it's like if something ends badly and all the relationships are fractured, it's just a bummer. It's hard to look back at this stuff. But anyways, there were some good things that came out of it in terms of there was some positive stuff there in the homestead. So I looked into the breed, the New Jersey, whatever they are, the New Jersey Giants. Is that what they're called? um, the New Jersey Giant Chicken, which is an interesting name because they were named, I think, before the New York Giants were. But they say a lot of things about the breed. Um, they're they get up to the males get up to 13 pounds. The chickens to 10 pounds. They're the biggest breed of chicken, and apparently they very large eggs. Not the greatest. Like we would never choose this breed, but given this is when it happened, it might be something. Like it might be something. We have to experience this breed of chicken. Like they all have specific things. There's some breeds we'd never get again. The Polish chickens we just would never get. They're neat looking. They have these like tufts of feathers, but they're just a disaster. One of the roosters we had was like attacking people. Like it was just a nightmare. And they just weren't good breeds. They didn't survive. Some breeds are hardier. They're just better. There's some of them are more, I mean, some they're just, they're all different. They have their characteristics. And at some point we might need a meat bird. We raised meat birds on our farm when we were vegetarian, basically. We were just starting to eat a little bit of meat. And they had meat birds at whatever southern states is the place we used to go. It's similar to Tractor Supply. And they had these meat birds, and they were gross. They didn't develop feathers. They had this pink skin, and they grew twice as fast as the other birds. Apparently, this New Jersey Giant takes 9 months to mature, and the rest of them take 5 months. So it's like kind of a, just a disaster of right now it doesn't look great. But we'll see how it goes. But these meat birds would, they were twice the size, and their muscles outgrew their organs, and some of them just died. They were like 3-4 weeks old. They were already big, fat chickens with like no feathers and pink, barely any feathers, and like they're gross looking. But they develop to grow fast and produce a lot of meat, and they're just not right. They're not natural. And so if we're going to have to raise meat birds in the future, if there's no post-apocalyptic situation, apocalyptic situation, this might be a good breed because in general the birds are very gamey. They're not really good eating. You have to do things to make them more tender. They're just I mean, they're nothing like the chicken you get at the store. The ones that they're raising, the chickens you get at the store are just these horrible Frankenbirds. Like they're just developed for mass muscle production, and they're not like they can barely survive. They're not like they don't scratch. They don't like chickens do. They don't act like a normal chicken. It was ugly. I mean I felt bad looking at these mutant birds that we had. I was like, I'm never going to raise those again, and they're not sustainable. I don't think they can lay eggs. I mean, I don't think I don't even know how they survive as adults. I mean, they're just they can barely walk. It's like they're like birds on steroids. Like they look like a human with the puffed up muscles on steroids. It's kind of gross. Anyways, so I went outside with my dogs, and there was a red-winged blackbird. There was a bunch of them, and there's just all these nice sounds during the spring. It's a nice warm day out there. It's supposed to rain later on. I planted all these blueberry bushes in the last couple of days, and I was trying to get them in there before the rain. And I think it's going to rain tonight and maybe tomorrow, or maybe tonight or maybe tomorrow or both. And there's just all I can hear the noises out though. I have the window open, but I have this. I have the. I'm showing these red-winged blackbirds, which I really love. They show up in late February, and they have this great song, and then they raise chicks in our field. I have where they were dive bombing us. One male was dive bombing us. They're very aggressive. They intimidate the other sort of songbirds, and they chase the shit out of hawks and stuff. But they have this beautiful song in the summer. They flash their red wings. They just this jet black color with iridescent sort of a green tint. I mean, they're just really good-looking birds. And the bird wasn't doing its song. This was a male bird that it only did it once. But I have this video clip of it. It saw our dog, and so it was just sort of sitting on this fence post. I was waiting for it to do its song, but eventually it does. It's like a short video. You can hear the other sounds in the background here. Okay, so it's just so windy today you can't hear shit, so I'm just going to show you. This is the red-winged blackbird. It's not even a good video, so it didn't work out. I do have a video of our pond I took like last night or the night before. I think it was last night. There's a frog there. There's the fish over there. We have 5 or 6 of these frogs in here now. I don't know how many they come and go, but they lay eggs in the summer or whatever, and we'll have tadpoles in here. And they're usually, because they're leopard frogs, they swim away there. Plus, he's going to hunt them with sucks. She doesn't eat them, so it's a waste. Come on, Tulsa, don't do that. Come on, stay out of there. Anyways, there's a little tiny fish there. I don't know if you can see it right there. Looks really big because I zoomed in, but compared to the other fish, it's tiny. So, all these fish are born here. We started with 5. All right. Okay, so I did a video yesterday. A bunch of people sent me this. It's Hilaria dismissing Alec, but they do this banter thing. And then I have a bunch of memes and clips of them. And I watched all of them. I don't usually watch them. I just put them up there. But I had to edit the thing because I knew I had doubled up some of it and I had to redo it. And so I watched it so I could fix it. And I picked up a pattern of behavior. So let's watch this thing first.
The Hilaria show.
No. I think we're gonna see. We're gonna see how it feels to have it be out there.
It's gonna be great. You're a winner.
Oh my God! When I'm talking, you're not talking.
Sorry.
No, when I'm talking, you're not talking.
See, look at her. What do you think you want? Sympathy? Nobody likes either one of you. And look at him, look at the camera. They do this performative thing, and she's not a good actress. It's this thing where they have this banter back and forth. And I've noticed it in a lot of the videos. I'll show you all the clips. And I have a theory about it that I thought of after I made the video, and I was going to go back, but I didn't want to redo it. So I thought, just who cares? But, it's kind of funny.
This is why, yes, we'll have to just cut him out of the show. No, I mean, I think this is a really...
people who throw their spouses under the bus and she talks shit about him a lot in her Instagram posts and then in interviews. She talks stuff, she went after a guy who was once an A-list celebrity. And, she's been famous ever since, which she clearly likes. She liked being, she had 1 million followers on Instagram. She did some work for the Hollywood Reporter and something. She wants to be in the spotlight. And now has a reality TV show, likes to do interviews. None of that would have happened on her own. She wouldn't have been famous on her own. And, and I'll get into her accent too. That's a part of it. But they do this banter back and forth. And I think it must be a big part of the reality show as well. It's constantly there. This is how they display themselves in public.
The raw show, and it's very real, and we took a lot of chances. And
What chances did you take? Fucking chances?
I think that we'll see where it leads us. We'll see what it feels like to have to be out there, and then we'll see, if people like it.
That's the only thing that matters. If they ask you to do it again, you're doing it. Don't lie.
The Hilaria show.
No.
Okay, so there's more. She dismissed him later on. Since there's a couple different clips. But let's go to the memes. Let me show you the part of the memes that I'm talking about here, where they do this banter.
I figured men do it. Why can't I do it too? There's so much collaboration. There's so much sisterhood right now. And yeah, I would say hopefully we're done.
So you notice here there's no accent. This is a clip where she's about to go snip, snip on Alec. At the end of the clip, I showed you, I had a longer one yesterday. One of those clips from the interview. And I had a longer one from them. And she talked about how she was going to edit out and she did her scissors again. The same one she's going to do here with his nuts, right? Where she talks about giving a vasectomy. But she has no accent here. And when she was first caught that she was appropriating a culture and faking her backstory, she said that, that sometimes she has an American accent, sometimes she has a Spanish accent, but it goes back and forth, right? It's all over the place. Even in that clip that you saw, sometimes she really hams it up because it's a character she's playing. We'll get into that in a moment.
But Alec still has to go and do his part.
Boom, snip. You got to de-nut him. You got to de-nut Alec. This is great. Watch it. He's got to do his part.
Say, hopefully we're done. But Alec still has to go and do his part.
Look at her look at her face when she makes the scissors. She wants to de-nut this guy. I mean, she's been a disaster for Alec, right?
Consider the source.
Oh, she's a white girl? Yes, I am a white girl. I am a white girl.
So, for example, my wife's on the phone with her hairdresser or her friend. She's like, really? Okay, I can't wait to see you. That's going to be great. Fantastic. What time? 12 o'clock? My wife is from Spain. Mm-hmm. And she said, blah, blah, blah.
So here's my theory about this, and it's probably not much of a theory because I know other people have sort of developed this. There's all these people that really hate Hilaria, and they show up on my channel once in a while because they love my coverage, and sometimes they post my shit over there, and they have like some kind of chat groups and whatever it is, right? And I was told by multiple people that, commenters, viewers, that Alec was in some kind of movie with Selma Hayek, who Hilaria looks like. And Selma Hayek didn't like him, right? He wanted to be with her, but she didn't want to be with him. Again, I don't know, some celebrity bullshit. I don't pay attention because I don't care about any of it, right? I just, whatever. And that he ends up choosing her. Now, there was a documentary about a woman who got outed as being a fake vegan, and they made a Netflix documentary about it. It's called Bad Vegan, and she got in a relationship with some criminal scammer, and he encouraged her to drain her resources. She had a restaurant that Alec, well, first she used to date Alec Baldwin, and then they were kind of dating on and off, and Alec went to a restaurant, and that's where he met Hilaria, right? That's the backstory. And, the thing about his obsession with Selma Hayek, if that's a real thing, it sounds like he ordered an escort, like an expensive escort, one of these high-end escorts kind of, and had her role play that she was, she was like a Spanish maid or something. And he loved it so much, he said, keep on doing it. Because that's what their banter sounds like, right? Because you can hear that she doesn't have a Spanish accent. And she's far less interesting because her voice is so high and annoying. When she speaks in just her regular American accent, it's very off-putting. There's a lot of girls like her in New England, wealthy girls who grow up in these wealthy families, and they're mousy, and she's kind of she's like a type that I know exists in New England area. And so she grew up in Boston with that high accent, and just annoying and not anything that anybody would pay attention to. But then she has a Spanish accent, and she has a different personality and all this stuff that she's doing. And Alec likes it. Like, he likes this back and forth. Like, he's, it's a reverse I Love Lucy with Desi Arnaz, or whatever it is. He has some sort of fantasy about this where they have this banter, and and he thinks it's entertaining because they look at the camera like people are being entertained. You'll see a bunch of the clips, and it's not entertaining. It's annoying, and it's like I bet their whole show. I haven't watched any of the episodes of the show, but I bet they do a lot of this banter where they go at each other and these things, and it's obviously something he's into. It's like she's some hooker who's been role playing for him, like they've been, they've been doing this role play, and they think everyone else wants a piece of it, and fucking we don't, right? It's really weird, and whatever their dynamic is in their relationship, it's based in a complete lie, because you hear him say, my wife is Spanish, and she's not. She grew up in Boston, went to a Boston high school. Her name is Hilaria Haywood Thomas, or Hillary Haywood Thomas, and she changed her name to Hilaria, which people say doesn't even exist as a Spanish name, and made up this, accent that's always changing. It's the ever-changing accent, where sometimes you can't produce foods that she should be able to produce because her native language is English, right? And so let's go back to some of these things here.
We have very few ingredients. We have tomatoes. We have, how do you say it? Cucumbers. We have red pepper. We have, of course. It's not easy. And I think part of it is that I'm in shape before I have a baby. And then I stay active when I'm pregnant. And I'm not trying to stay thin. I'm just trying to keep my circulation going and stretching and keep my muscle tone up. And then we're having a baby. It was a surprise, a wonderful surprise.
And one time at band camp,
it was a surprise, a wonderful surprise.
So I stopped making memes about them a while ago. I stopped doing videos about them. So I haven't, I covered her not knowing the word for onion as well. But her native language, she grew up in as an American, right? She vacationed in Spain. Her parents are English and Scottish. She's not Spanish in any way. But she changes her accent. Like she's got an accent that's like a chameleon accent because it's not real.
Well, there was a scream I heard, which is the scream that's normally reserved if there's a spider in the house on Long Island. I'm not exaggerating.
So the first part of the book is philosophy on how to live very namaste. I have
Living very namaste. Now, she's supposed to be a yoga instructor, right? And she's talking about living very namaste. And most people will be like, oh, well, she must know something about yoga, or they don't know what namaste really means. And so it's a Sanskrit word, and it means the divinity within me bows before the divinity within you, right? That's the original meaning of it. So you would do pranams hands, prayer hands, and say namaste, and you would be bowing before the soul within the other person. The soul within me is bowing before the soul within you. So what the fuck's she talking about living very namaste, right? At the very most, it's a greeting. People say namaste. I'm living very namaste. Like just like everything about her is like fraudulent, right?
The first part of the book is philosophy on how to live very namaste. I have 3 little babies. I live kind of a crazy life between work and them and everything else. So it's just, how to stay calm and centered and deal with things that are coming at you. Then we could talk about food.
I'm going to kick your culo.
It's gonna kick my culo.
I'm going to kick your culo.
It's gonna kick my culo.
This fucking banter, and he's totally into it. Like he's into her having a Spanish accent. That's why he's talking about David Letterman. Oh, my wife's from Spain. And like they just created this illusion. Like something where they kind of believe it. But you heard before, the previous clip, she doesn't have any accent at all, right? That's her normal voice. Fucking. And she wrote books. She's got all this, she had some, she has these, a career, she's famous because of this guy, right? Who she's always shitting on. He's much older than her. I mean, now he's just old and creepy in his 70s, and his best days are behind him. His career is done, and he shot a coworker, and now they're reduced to reality TV, and that's where she belonged all along.
Honey. Honey, this is Governor Christie's fleece. This is the fleece that everyone's been looking for. Did you steal the governor's fleece?
I cannot tell a lie. I stole it. I'm his biggest fan.
I admire Governor Christie, too. New Jersey State Police.
First he's calling the cops on his wife, but she really went into the accent there. She's not a good actress, and they love this. They do this all the time. Like I'm only probably getting a fraction of it. I'm sure they do it a lot in their show. And whenever they interact, there's this banter, this whole fucking weird shit, this role playing.
Leonela! Leonela! Basta! Las palitas, basta! Las palitas, suficiente!
Ay, ay, ay.
Sí. Itana idama ben. Itana! Itana, come.
You know, I got a lot of viewers that liked my coverage of Alec Baldwin, and, you know, I was already doing it. So I'd go to his Instagram all the time. And he stopped appearing in videos after a while. He stopped mocking Trump. I mean, everything turned on him. But at some point, there was these videos where he's calling his dogs, and he does a Spanish accent. Like the dogs, you know, like they speak like the Spanish dogs that need you know, you're speaking in English, but with a Spanish accent. It's the most fucked up, weird shit. And it kind of represents their whole fraudulent marriage and their, you know, bullshit thing they're doing here, right? Because, you know, it's all fake. And these dogs, you know, Atana, you know, he's like, what, the dogs just speak Spanish? Because your wife's speaking Spanish to him and you have to go, like, it's just fucking weird.
Tama! Itana! Itana! No! Come! Itana, come! Itana, hush! I'm being upstaged by a dog. That's where my career is at right now. Itanta! Come!
Ay, ay, ay.
See.
Well, we're having a baby. How about that for a project?
Ay, ay, ay.
Cravings here, okay.
See.
Fake, 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 fake.
Okay, so enough of this stuff with them, but, you know, it's something weird. Like, it's a role-playing weird shit that they do, and it's, again, it's like one of the least entertaining things. And I don't know how the reality TV show is doing ratings-wise. And those kids are loud, like, you know, it's just fucked up. But anyways, I want to get into Don Lemons. He said he was sexually harassed at CNN. And then I want to cover the economy. You know, my wife just called me when I was about to do this voiceover. And she said that the April 1st, again, it's April Fool's Day, but that sometime in April, there's going to be I don't know if she said April 1st or 30th, but the tariffs are going to kick in and the prices are going to go up drastically. And so people are now stockpiling, which maybe you guys are aware of, and buying things now before that happens. Of course, price increases sometimes take some time to kick in. And then the economy is going to look like it's doing well and Trump will brag and then, you know, go south and crash and all those things. So let's see what happens there. Let's get into Don Lemons. And again, I'm going to come back to the economy at the end here.
I would. I've been harassed by women and men in the work. And some things are not even, it's ridiculous. Now, look.
Tell us. I'm very interested.
Okay, so what do you mean it's ridiculous? I mean, like, Don Lemons is such a boob. He's such a moron, like, just goofy. Why does he think he's been harassed by women? Like, what you know, it's just silly.
There are some things that
No, I'm interested in this.
there are some things that are really egregious, right? And not everything is Harvey Weinstein level. And
No, that's rape.
And then some of the, right, that's a whole different story. I'm not talking about that. And I'm not saying it makes it right, but I remember when I was in Atlanta and was in the cafeteria, commissary, whatever.
At
you wanna call it,
CNN?
at CNN. And this woman, young lady, tweaked my nipples and said, "Oh, it's cold in here."
Holy shit, you didn't sue her, Don? Why'd you lay her out? Why'd you slap her?
And I said, "Okay, you realize if I did that, they'd be walking me out the door right now." But I didn't care. I didn't go to HR. I didn't say anything because I was just like, it's a double standard.
Good
it's
for
fine.
you.
Yeah, it's a bit. And also, but I've never told this story as well. Someone who I worked with.
Okay, I don't think that's sexually harassing. It might be demeaning. You have to know the context of the relationship with the woman. Like, she could have been somebody who was, I mean, like, it sounds like it's just weird. I mean, if that actually happened, right? You know, it's weird if that but if it's his boss or something like that, then there's a power dynamic. But either way, it's just like silly, and you look like an asshole if you go to HR over something like that. Even though, like, it's pretty offensive. Like, people should be grabbing your nipples without your permission.
Also harassed me at CNN, and I never went to management. First of all, I was so
A
new
man or
there.
a woman?
A woman. And she knew I was gay. And it was just bizarre. She was going through a divorce. It was just weird. And I never went to management. First of all, I thought, like, okay, they may find a way to get rid of me because if I tell this story, I don't know if they're going to believe me or not. But then she was so mean to me after that. I was like, I should have told the story. But yeah, I've been harassed by men and women.
But what constituted this harassment? Like, what did you, physically, like in the office, like come in and twirl for me, Don?
It wasn't a twirl for me, but it was not. It was not in the office. But yeah, it's all. I won't go that far.
So you had to be with her in certain business occasions, but outside the office,
Outside the
like at a
office.
cocktail party,
Maybe.
places like that.
Maybe. Don Lemon, some guy was videoing him in a bar, and Don reached down his front of his own pants, and then stuck it in the guy's nose, and said a bunch of stuff like, "You like to smell dick" or something, like weird stuff, right? The guy, this guy accused him of doing that. It came out, so I mean, he was drunk and weird, and so, he says these things that are salacious. I mean, so desperate for attention.
That no, I know, because like in our business and media, there's a lot of cocktail parties. There's a lot of assholes.
A lot of cocktail parties, and remember, this was a while ago, and there was not Uber and anything like that. And if you are in Atlanta, their taxis aren't available, and so you say, hey, I'm gonna we've had a couple of drinks, and do you mind if I or whatever? No, don't go home, stay in the guest room, that sort of thing. So yeah.
The guest room.
Yeah.
Oh, you were staying at somebody's house. Right.
Just tell the fucking story, you fucking weirdo, right? And so what? She came into your room and tried to be with you even though she knows you're gay? Like, what?
Well, I mean, look, let me go back to the cocktail party because something very important about those kind of cocktail parties.
Yeah.
They serve these garlicky hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah.
And people have the worst sort of breath.
Yes.
Usually unattractive, pudgy, doughy male reporters. And they pin you to the wall and they're talking to you and their breath stinks. If someone was sexually harassing me with that breath, I would definitely go to HR. But if they did not have the garlicky breath, I would let the nipple tweaking go. That's just where I draw the line. That just shows that we're all individuals.
We're all individuals, and I'm an adult. And look, maybe it's...
Are you, Don? Like, just because you say so? There's no evidence that you're an adult. Like, you have an adult mind, at least, capable of making adult decisions and having adult opinions.
I think it is different for men and women, depending on the power structure and that sort of thing.
I wish I had been harassed this much. Quite honestly, I think it's flattering as long as you can fend them off easily.
Yes. I know. As a man, I could say no, I'm not interested, or just
right.
But also as someone, someone who was molested as a child.
You were?
Yeah.
Oh
shit. Is this the appropriate time to be bringing this up, Don?
So for me, it is a whole different thing.
Oh,
I know how to say.
Sure. Must be very triggering.
Well, yes and no. Well, because you know how to deal with it, and you know what's really important or not, and who has the power. I figure as a man, I have the power to say I don't want to do this.
And you're bigger and stronger.
Yes, I don't need to go to HR and ruin your career. I just tell you, I'm not interested in this. You were drunk. We had a couple of drinks or whatever. Let's let it go. But some people, they've made a business out of it. Quite frankly.
Yeah.
Whether it's
they're so much worse than you, Don.
It's whoever it is, but some people have. But in many ways, and many times, most times it's legitimate, but there are times that it's not. I think
sometimes it's not legitimate. It's illegitimate.
A little bit.
No, but I mean, look, I can't relate to that. I'm almost the...
All right, let's just move on. Just fucking Don, attention seeking, and just, I don't know why Bill Maher would even have Don Lemons on. I mean, he's just a buffoon. Everybody in CNN knew he was a moron and a buffoon, and people on the internet certainly do. CNN's a joke. They're all jokes. I mean, none of these people, some of them are smarter than others, some of them are more talented, but they're all sellouts and they're all, absolute jokes. They're not journalists. But Don Lemons is the bottom of the barrel, and he's embarrassing. I mean, he's an embarrassment to CNN and this fucking bullshit. And Bill Maher must know he's an idiot, right? The whole thing he did with Elon Musk and all that shit, it was just so fucking pathetic. And his show is pathetic. But anyways, all right, let's move on to the next thing here. Okay, so one of my viewers sent me this. I dismissed it. It's got over 7 million views. And I just thought it was goofy and, it's just not something I'm... Well, then I realized I wanted to kind of shit on it. Well, let's just play a little bit of it here.
Last night, I started off by researching Hooters getting bankrupted by private equity and ended up uncovering the next 2008 level economic collapse.
Boom, I did it. I'm breaking the story right here on Twitter. I broke the story.
And they're hiding the bubble inside a private equity black box that makes it almost impossible to see what they're doing. Almost. This time, they're not going to collapse.
Not for me, though. I was able to penetrate into the black box and into the bubble, and I got him. I caught him, and I'm breaking it here with you guys.
The banks and make it too big to fail. They're going to bankrupt the entire American pension system. I'm almost too afraid to make this video, but it has.
They're going to get me. I know they're going to get me if I expose it. And when you guys all hear about this, you'll be able to reverse it and stop it from happening. And just because I broke this story, and the world will all sing Kumbaya, and we'll change the world, and the wars will stop, and everything will be good, and everything will be right in the world again. Or, it's a meaningless video that's going to have no effect on their ability to do anything because everybody's nodded.
Has to be done, so let's get into it.
Okay, so this is goofy. And it's goofy because I talk about this all the time. And I'm glad to some extent there's these things out there, but most of them are fundamentally dishonest because the economy is fucked. And I'm going to show you with the national debt clock once again. And, whether this thing's true or not, they're going to start taking money. I've been saying this for years. Not because I'm some economic genius or I have some inside information, because the economy is so fucked, and anybody with a remedial understanding of math and economics and just budgeting will know this, that the debt is so crazy that the economy should have collapsed years ago, and they're going to have to take back their promises, and they're going to take back your wealth, what you think is your wealth, your property, whatever it is. It's going to be different in different locations, around the world, different countries, different, depending on what state it's going to be different, right? It's going to be, but it's all going to be bad to whatever extent because it's a Ponzi scheme. It's a illusionary economy, a debt-based economy. And these things always end badly because there's not real value, right? They've created artificial value out of debt, where debt is wealth and, all the other aspects of it. But then there's the moral depravity and the collapse of, human beings going towards an idiocracy type of model where we get less and less evolved. And so these people come up like they've broken some big story here when we've known this for years. Like the economy's fucked. And the only thing that's amazing about it is that they've been able to keep it afloat this long. The actual numbers, they fudge the numbers so much that, let's get into the thing here. Okay, so the basic numbers here, they've added some things and they've gotten rid of some things, which is interesting. But you see that the majority of things on this this national debt clock are either red or black, and there are a few things that are green, right? And the green things are your assets, and everything else are your liabilities. And so the red, which is the big red number here, but this isn't the biggest one, is the $36 trillion of national debt. And the big number that's green is $500 trillion in tax revenue. And so this is all accounted for. So we know from Elon Musk and basic math that there's $3 trillion of debt added each year. So the budget of $5 trillion is not enough. The American government spends $8 trillion or $7 trillion and $1 trillion in interest. So here's... the interest is somewhere over here. Let me find these things here. So this is the interest on the debt. It's over $1 trillion. So here, now I don't know if they've had these numbers all along. I just didn't notice them. But it says here, it's $7 trillion in our expenses. So we're spending $2 trillion more each year than what we're bringing in for income, right? Which is the tax revenue. But also there's another $1 million of interest. So there's going to be $3 trillion added to the debt that's already quite substantial. Every minute there's $3 million added to the debt, like $1 million every 20 seconds. That's how it was before. It might be faster now. And so here's the U.S. gross domestic product. Now, some of these things, again, I don't know if they just added them because there's more information available because of Doge. I don't remember some of these things being here. It's almost $30 trillion in gross U.S. gross domestic product. But even, that gross domestic product, if they took all of it, and they can't do that, of course, it's gross, it's not even net profits, couldn't cover, it would still be $6 trillion of debt, right? And the gross domestic product is, owned by everybody. This is not government money. And so it says here there is the revenue per citizen is they're getting $14,000 per citizen. So each person is paying, on average, $14,000 to contribute to this. That can't be, they're spending all this money, $7 trillion of money, that's your account, you're responsible for. We're all responsible for some share of this debt, right? And the total state tax revenue is $2 trillion. And then there's the total local revenue is $2 trillion. And so there's all that, which has nothing to do with the national debt and the national, these things. And so they don't have any money because they are spending beyond their means, right? So then you get into this. The U.S. Total debt, our collective debt, is $100 trillion. So, this is beyond this, right? So it's $100 trillion. Total personal debt is $25 trillion. People own $25 trillion. The total credit card debt is $1 trillion. Student loan debt is $1 trillion. Something almost $2 trillion, right? Bank interest is $1 trillion in bank interest. And so all these things, right? U.S. interest paid is over $5 trillion. And so there is the credit default swaps, which is at $700 trillion, $725 trillion. And then there's these other things here. What they've added, and I've never seen this before. Again, I don't know if I just didn't notice it or something new. I know they've taken some things away. So this is the other U.S. wealth. So there's precious metal reserves, which they're saying is at $1 trillion. So we have $1 trillion of gold and $36 trillion of debt. And so the currency hasn't been backed by gold in quite a bit, but that's not a lot of gold or whatever it is, precious metals. It's almost nothing. Mineral reserves, we have $6 trillion. Real estate, $74 trillion. And land is $24 trillion. Stock market is $50 trillion, again, worthless. Recaptured access, $7 trillion. And total hidden wealth is $168 trillion. Now, that's if they sold off America or they started selling some of this stuff off, and it says here the wealth per citizen is $493,000 per citizen. That's the average of all this collective wealth that's there, that, in whatever it is, right? The trade deficit, which again I haven't seen, is at 294. Is that trillion or billion there? I guess it's billion. U.S. trade deficit is $1 trillion. The U.S. debt held by foreign countries is $8 trillion. And this is imported oil. And so the one thing that they've taken off here is unfunded liabilities. It used to be down right here. And those were liabilities of things that, you either have an asset or a liability. This is a liability. This is an asset. Like this, our national debt is a liability. Our income is an asset. And they had unfunded liabilities, which was Social Security, which they no longer have up here. But that was like $200 trillion of unfunded liabilities. It was like $24 trillion in Social Security and like 36 in Medicaid, and then these other things. These are things that are promised to you, but they don't have any money. Here's the Social Security here. Targeted budget items, and the Social Security does not. Defense goes into Social Security is $1 trillion. They say defense is $800 billion, but it's really $1.7 trillion. And so Medicare here is at $1 trillion. So in terms of the budget of the money, these things are considered unfunded liabilities, things that there aren't they're not part of the line, but the budget items. And so they're like completely fucked because they can't pay you this, right? They were supposed to take Social Security was supposed to be like 401k, right? It was something that they were taking your money and investing it, so by the time you got old, your money would have grown so they could pay you what you're owed. But they haven't done that. They've spent Social Security on other bullshit that isn't, they spent your money, basically. They spent your 41k, your retirement, and, all of this stuff. And so whatever they end up doing here, you're going to lose things that are promised to you, and you're going to lose lifestyle. And, all these things are, it's not doable. Like, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that if you have a budget of $5 trillion, but you're spending $7 trillion, you have another $1 trillion of interest, and there's no way to cut the budget down to anything where you would spend less, there would be some surplus, right? And you have to get, the more this goes up, the more interest there's going to be. I mean, it's the worst kind of revolving debt. What about $2 trillion of interest a year, or $4 trillion? So at some point it's fucked, right? At some point, one of these countries, the U.S. owes all this money to these foreign countries, over $8 trillion here. There's, so all the things that are, it's just so backward and fucked. There's just so much red on this. It's not just like this part here. It's not just a national debt, but there's U.S. total debt, and then there's all the, the interest paid, and then there's people's personal debt, and there's credit card debt, and all this debt that no one can really ever get out from under, collectively and individually. There's so many people that are in debt, and they're going to die in debt, right? And just like with the country. And they added some things here because I think of Doge and this stuff. But the bottom line is we're fucked. And Elon Musk admitted it as much as he could. Saying that if we don't do something now, we'll go bankrupt. But we're bankrupt now. There's no way unless they, the only way to do this is to make $36 trillion worth far less by devaluing the currency, right? Like if you made each, if an average home cost $20 million, we had, and the value of the dollar was so depleted that they could print out trillions of dollars because it'd been watered down. They could pay off this debt, but the economy would still be fucked, right? Because you'd have to devalue the currency to do that. So I don't know how they're going to do this. It might have to do something with crypto. It might be World War III. It might be collapse of the American government. It could be any number of things. But this isn't just America. This is all these countries across the globe. And they're going to have to rework the economy. They're going to have to give you a new deal, and the new deal is going to suck. And so when a person like this girl comes in and says that they've cracked the code, there's no code to be cracked. We're fucked, and we've been fucked, ever since I've been born, 60 years, and, even longer than that. Going back to the 1930s when they went to a debt-based economy, and they went to these, these global Rothschild banks, these like the Federal Reserve type banks, where there'd be these centralized banks in every country, and they controlled the currency and all these things. This is what happened, and there's no stopping it, because this is how a debt-based usury system ends up collapsing, economically, socially, morally, all these things. The people just get weaker and weaker and stupider. It has a negative effect on everybody, and then it collapses. Anything else is a lie, right? There's nothing you can do about it. We'll just have to figure out things once we see how, when the smoke clears, what's left, right? Like how you're going to live. You're going to have to adapt to a new deal, a new way of life, because the system you're 100% dependent on is completely crapped out. Okay, so I got a couple more check update things, the checks and the stuff I was covering earlier. But then there's two things on CNN that were very timely that I just happened to come across when I turned the TV on for when I was doing my exercises. And then when I turned the TV back on, I was taping, and then my wife came home and the dog started barking, so I had to tape it again. And then went and did some things, so I came back, and this was on. Jake Tapper said this.
Everyone, and get away from everything the Doge is doing and all the frustrations over that.
So does that mean lawmakers are hoping for a big national crisis somewhere?
So they're joking about something that's obviously true. Again, I copied something from earlier in the day, which you're about to see. And I went to tape it. The dogs barked, so I couldn't tape it. So I had to redo it. Came back in about half an hour, turned on the TV, and that's what I heard. Right? I heard the end of that conversation where Jake Tapper says, does that mean lawmakers are hoping for a big national crisis? The guy said, yeah, maybe they are. Of course they are. Their play is to allow Trump to destroy the world, and, they'll help him do it. I mean, even if he, doesn't do it all by himself, they'll certainly help him in whatever way they can, and then they'll run their bullshit agenda on the other side. But then there was this.
In terms of the USA debacle and some of the other, things that have been uncovered, there's a room for a lot of improvement in our federal budget and our payment system. Somebody's got to be watching the dollars. I absolutely do think there's room for improvement, and I also think that when we are able to put together a reconciliation package with the pay-fors and the extension of the 2017 Trump tax cuts, that is a significant step in the right direction. To your point, we're not going to solve the federal deficit this year.
Never, right? To your point, we're not going to solve it this year. They're never going to solve it. It can't be solved, right? And they show me tell me a scenario. See, right now we're in debt, right? So if you have been in a situation, and I'm sure almost all of you have, where your assets, which I've showed you at the beginning with this, the national debt clock, your assets are less than your debt, right? Your expenses, your liabilities are more than your debt, right? You've been in a situation where you're not making enough money to pay all the things that you need to pay, where you're looking at, you don't have a surplus. I mean, almost nobody has a surplus, right? Because rich people spend as much money as they make. And oftentimes these rich people are taking out huge loans and gambling and, these people, like, that's why why do you think Trump had to go bankrupt 6 times? Because he's borrowing money and things that his businesses didn't work out the way he thought, so he couldn't pay the money back. So he defaulted on these things, right? And they lent him money again because that's part of the game. They don't give a shit. They lend money to these high-risk people or these people who are considered low risk, but, Donald Trump is someone who's failed them before. And why do you think he kept on going bankrupt? Because he kept on giving them more money to lose, right? And so when you're in debt, when your assets are far less than your liabilities, your debts exceed your assets, then you can't ever think about paying anything off. But, maybe you'll get a better job, or you'll get, some kind of windfall profit, or you win the fucking lottery or some bullshit like that. There's no lottery for the U.S. to win. There's no quadrillion dollars worth of stuff out there to erase this debt. And the debt itself can't be erased because it's part of the, it's being used as assets, right? America's debt and everyone else's debt is being used as assets in derivatives markets and other things. So I said this before when I covered it, when Elon Musk came out and said that we're going to go bankrupt. And I've shown that meme so many times I don't need to show it here. If we don't do this, we're going to go bankrupt. But what he isn't admitting is we're already bankrupt. Because if we have $7 trillion in expenses, and those are just the things we budgeted for, what happens when they have to do a bailout? And they have to print money so that we can have some COVID bailout, $1 trillion for that or whatever, right? $1 trillion, what about the wars that are going to happen? Where's that money going to come from? Or what about the unfunded liabilities? So you have these disasters that are waiting you, right? Let's say you're a person in debt, and then you have an illness and you're uninsured, your insurance doesn't cover it. Maybe you have like a $10,000 or $20,000 deductible because you just can't, you're just hoping you don't go to the hospital. And then you or a couple of your family members go to the hospital, and you got $40,000 deductible you got to come up with, and you have all this other debt, and you're not, all these things, right? So, but just the debt that we know about, we're spending $7 trillion, and we have $5 trillion in assets, but another $1 trillion in interest. So we're $3 trillion in debt for this year. Every year it just gets added to the debt, like I showed you earlier. So if you were going to start paying it back, you'd have to cut the budget to $2 trillion, right? You have $5 trillion in assets, so you'd have to cut your expenses to $2 trillion. So out of $7 trillion, 75% of your budget, 72% of your budget, right, is gone. You're getting rid of that. You only have 28% of your budget, your money that you can spend. So everything, you're going to have to cut 75% of everything so that you have only $2 trillion. And then with the other $1 trillion, the $3 trillion that's left, I think I said 2.5 before, whatever, still doesn't matter. Whatever's left over, you pay $1 trillion on the principal and $1 trillion debt. And then you reduce the debt by $1 trillion, right? So that's like nothing, right? That's absolutely nothing. And that's only if you don't have to do more printing of cash because of some other bullshit. And so that means you would be fiscally responsible for 1 year. And let's say Trump did that every year and they took $4 trillion off the $36 trillion debt. And everyone was just scrimping, we reduced the budget. I mean, that would kill the economy, that kill the country. They can't do that anyway. There's no way that we could live on $2 trillion or $2.5 trillion or whatever the fuck it is. Even $3 trillion, even $3 trillion, right? That's the original analogy with $3 trillion. And then you'd use it $1 trillion for the principal, $1 trillion for the interest. And then again, for 4 years, you reduce the debt by $4 trillion. And Democrats come back in and they go crazy with the budget. I mean, so it's not going to happen. You're going to spend $7 trillion or more every year until the economy collapses or the country collapses or whatever happens, right? There's no stopping that. So, like, these people are just all fucking liars. Everyone kind of knows that's going to happen. And if you were one of these greasy politicians or people in power and you had a choice of being fiscally responsible and not taking huge kickbacks and not taking care of the powers that be that are giving you all the money that they have to buy you, all the people that buy you in foreign powers and these things, so that you'll give away America's wealth. And you have a chance to loot what's left America's wealth and line your own pockets and then move to some other fucking country. Leave America behind and just go to some other place. Or being fiscally responsible. What do you think they were going to do? The politicians and the powers that be, they're going to keep on rolling out the collective. This is where you're taxing the collective. You're making everybody give some of their money to the collective wealth, and then it's going to benefit the few. That's how government works. You have the many contributing whatever they can contribute to benefit the few, and that's how governments work and these systems work, right? It's a scam. And so that scam doesn't mean being fiscally responsible. It means that, when the country's used up, you pull out of it like a used rubber and then you go to another fucking country, right? And do the same bullshit. And America becomes a third world, fourth world country, and then, whatever. But this is a global issue. And you're going to see, what happens. And like they have a plan, but their plan, they don't run everything. I've said this before. They can manifest very little. They're so dead inside, they don't have creative abilities to manifest things. They can sponge off other people's creative power. That's why they always need inventors and, other people, people with star power and charisma. Because if you meet these people, they're like dead inside. They have nothing to offer. Most of them grew up in wealth and they're very deficient in their internal world. And they're weird and they're creepy and they're just, they can't do anything on their own. And so they just suck off the collective. And everybody is contributing to their, system rigged in their favor. But they don't run things. It's just this temporary thing. There's divine power, divine forces. And so whatever's going to happen is going to happen, wherever this just plays out. But what's not going to happen is us paying down the debt. Like there's no, that's impossible. All right, so I had a few more little videos of my chicks, and then I'm going to, one of them, some egg thing. Then I'm going to wrap this up.
They're pecking the crap out of your grass that you put in here. They're eating the dirt or whatever it is.
So my wife came home and put some grass, like a little bit of grass and dirt, with some, just a chunk of like a clump of grass in there. And and she had me put in some grit because they need grit to chew their food. Like they just eat things whole, and they have this whole system, and they have this stuff. It's like rocks or little pebbles or little grains of sand they use to grind their food, and they also need microbes and things. They're always eating from the soil, and so they get microbes from the soil. So my wife put a clump of grass in here, and they were going crazy on it. I mean, they were eating the food still and the other stuff, but that was kind of interesting. So I sent her a video of it. Just picked up the eggs for today. There's 4 today. You see there's a pink one, 2 blue ones, and a green one. And, it's kind of like going to Easter every day. That's one of the good things about having hens, especially when you have these different colored eggs. All right, so this was a weird video. This had a lot of different things in it. I just did a JFK assassination. They released his files, and Lee Harvey Oswald was, did whatever he did. And so tomorrow, I'm sure I'm going to start covering more of that. They released, there's Lee Harvey Oswald was a obvious asset for the CIA, and that's right there. You probably already watched my video on it, or heard somebody else talking about it. But there's a lot of things going on, and stuff in Trumperland. So I'll get to more of this stuff. Today's Wednesday. This video will be up Friday. So whatever. There's always something. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely important for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.